22nd of January 2024. This is a loose cannon Skidmark, and I'm going to talk about some frustrations in civil society. We are faced with a situation where the average guy is battling to keep his head above water. Everything is against us. The infrastructure of the country is falling apart. Those things that are desperately needed to make an economy grow. If we look at the railways, that has been destroyed basically. It's non-existent, and connected to the railways is the harbours. We know the fiasco in the harbours, and we can already see how South Africa is losing out now with all those ships that needs to bypass the Suez Canal and come around the Cape. South Africa is getting nothing from that, simply for the reason that our harbours are dysfunctional. But the average guy on the street does not understand that and does not realize what that means. If you look at the railway system is there to make it possible for manufacturers, producers and miners to get their products to the next step in the ladder. Now that railway is missing, and we've been forced into road transport. Road transport is controlled by gangsters, we know that. It's mafia gangs that controls the road transport. And that makes it very difficult for just a normal, decent producer to get his products to the next stage in the ladder. It's impossible because he has to deal with criminals. Then we have this stupid situation where Briekmerke, which is the Minister of Police, tells Jacob Zuma, if you spill the beans on the ANC, I will spill the beans on what you did while we were in exile. Now, just ask yourself a fucking question. How the hell is that possible? The Minister of Police is actually admitting that there is atrocities that Jacob Zuma can reveal, and then he tries to shut Zuma up by threatening him with activities of Zuma. How is that possible that those gangsters are part of our government? We have landed in a situation in South Africa where 400 people sits in the parliament. Those 400 people are not representing the population. Their final selections, yeah, we have elections and all of that, but the moment that you've made your cross on that paper, that's when your democracy stops. Because a small group of each party, they will select the people that will end up in parliament. If you look at the general situation, the average normal citizen is under severe pressure just to buy food. Well, look at those politicians. They are, all of them, financially secure. Most of them are extremely wealthy. They get obscene salaries, they get obscene benefits, all of those things paid by the taxpayers. So what we have is we have this ruling cabal that has placed themselves in a position where they are untouchable. And they don't care about you. They're only there in those seats in Parliament for opportunities for themselves and their families and friends, not for us, the citizens. And we cannot get out of that death grip. We have a stupid situation where a president from a small tribe, the Vendas, is ruling and wrecking the lives of everybody in South Africa. How the fuck did that happen? But we've been brainwashed into this shit that we must believe democracy is that great thing. That is bullshit. And I have been seriously promoting the tribal route. That's the only way forward. When Czechoslovakia was balkanized, it was a disaster because a powerful country in the European bloc was reduced to a number of rebel states that means absolutely fuck all, in those states was captured by the West. Puppets in all of those little governments. So it was a power thing. But in South Africa, we must not be scared of balkanization, because balkanization is actually the only way out of this mess. And there's a lot of people that's going to frown about it. But the fact of the matter is, if you look at the different regions, which is basically tribal, each and every one of them has been ruined and wrecked by this ANC cabal, under control, full control of XXX. So they've captured the country. Look at Eskom. If you look at Eskom, Eskom has got two major, let's call it honeypots. The one is the cash, and that part of Eskom is in total control of gangsters. They are milking that cash dry. The other honeypot is the national grid. Now we have a problem with the national grid, that due to lack of maintenance, that grid is deteriorating. And the clever monkeys that are sitting behind the whole system in XXX gang, they know it. So they need to get that grid under their control before it totally falls apart. And we can already see that moves are in place to do it. If you look at Eskom objectively, Eskom has lost its right to exist due to simple financial matters. Eskom's got a debt book that will never perform. They've got loans that they cannot cover, plus their assets is falling apart. So what the hell is going to happen here? Now a lot of people are screaming that Eskom must not be privatized. You should go and take a serious look at Eskom and find out which Eskom assets are still actually belonging to Eskom and not belonging to a creditor where Eskom took a loan. And Eskom cannot service those loans. We know that. So Eskom is in essence already been privatized. We are being fooled to say it's not. But if all the assets has been given as security on loans, Eskom doesn't have any assets anymore. So there's actually nothing to privatize. Then we have this green drive. That green drive everywhere. The facts is coming out. It's a total bullshit. The renewables can never provide the stability of electricity supply that we actually need. Yes, there are simple situations where it makes 100% sense to go for renewables, and now I'm talking about private homes. If private homes go solar with their inverters and battery packs, they're going to take a lot of stress off Eskom during the day when industry is running. That will be a relief. And then at night, those guys can use Eskom as a battery. But the South African government and the controllers of Eskom are short-sighted. Instead of telling the people, being honest to the consumers and say, listen guys, you put up your solar and everything, and we certify it to see that you are actually taking stress off Eskom. And according to that formula, we will give you a credit on your Eskom account. We're not going to give you cash, but we'll give you a credit. If my business cannot meet overheads, I must cut overheads or shut the business down. The government not. They just up the taxes and make more loans. So there's nothing that constrains them and force them to live within their means. Now we're in a situation, they're struggling to pay the interest on their loans, and they're in a severe cash flow fuck-up. They cannot make ends meet because the tax base is diminishing due to a lot of reasons. But the economic collapse of South Africa is the biggest problem. So now I've got to fight with the Freedom Front Plus about the leadership in that party that did not act to the benefit of the voters. They have other agendas. So none of us actually got any benefit from voting from the Freedom Front Plus. And there's a lot of people that are angry with me. And I try and tell them and say, listen, look at the principle. You've got a leadership cabal in the Freedom Front Plus that's been sitting there for 30 years. They are financially secure. They're financially, most of them are financially very well off. while the rest of us are battling to put food on our table. If the Battle of Centurion is successful and they can remove that Vaseline gang from the Freedom Front Plus, it will inspire all the other political parties to do the same, because the other political parties has got exactly the same problem that we have in the Freedom Front Plus. There's a small cabal in the top end of the parties that controls everything. Somebody said to me, yeah, but they do have their constitution and the people can be handled with internal procedures. And I said, no. Just look at what happened in Gauteng. The guys voted, and when the Vaseline gang realized that they've lost, all their puppets are out. What did they do? This gang at the top of the Freedom Front Plus nullified that election. But what the fuck is that? That's a dictatorship. That's not democracy. So the fight in the Freedom Front is a principle fight. Now, if you look at it, South Africa is actually not a country. It is a region. And whether you like it or not, if you look at what happened to Bophuthatswana was a very well functioning state on its own. They had all the benefits of all their minerals and everything, and their country was developed and developing, and things were happening in Bophuthatswana. And the ANC destroyed that. The ANC also took the mineral rights away from Bophuthatswana. So the Tswanas has got no benefit from that minerals now. And that is something that's happening all over the country. Look at Kwakwa. I can remember Kwakwa was a bustling environment. There was a lot of industrial activity there. I did business with a lot of people in there. That has been destroyed. All along this destruction line was millions and millions of jobs destroyed. And then Cyril can stand on the stage and make a big story of 28 million people are now on SASSA. Now ask yourself this. The minimum wage is about 4,500 Rand a month. That's the minimum wage, roughly. Those people that were entitled to that minimum wage has been placed onto SASSA because the government activities destroyed the jobs that paid those minimum wages. So who's the losers? The people that worked in those factories and plants that has been destroyed. They must now be happy because they get 350 Rand a month against 4,500 Rand a month minimum wage. But what stuns me is that the population is taking it. You keep on listening to people like Ramaphosa and people like Malema, and they talk a lot of their kak, but none of them is actually developing and building the country so that you can work and give a future to your children. The black guys of my generation, they were all, most of them were employed, and they used their salaries to better the lives of their families and their children, and they focused on getting their children properly educated. And many of the professionals today, lawyers and advocates and accountants, doctors in the black communities, were people that graduated from, let's call it the apartheid education system. Today there's no education basically. Everything is destroyed. If you look at the most recent matric results, the top performing schools are all previously white schools. Why is that? Because the black schools were basically destroyed. No significant expansion was done, nothing was invested to make provision for taking more children. All they do is they run these children by bus into the areas where these good performing white schools are, and they flood those schools, and now the teachers must struggle with 80 pupils in a class and that like bekak. So the education system is under severe attack. The ANC wants that destroyed. The same thing is happening now with this national health thing. They want the last working health services destroyed. You must ask yourself why, because you must understand Just as your children are suffering when the education system collapses, the same way you and your children will suffer when the health system totally disappears. As it is, ordinary SASA citizens getting very little good treatment from the existing health system that is under government control. The middle class, blacks, they can go to private doctors and private hospitals and get good quality medical service. The government wants to destroy that as well. Why is that? Because it's part of the XXX plan to destroy the middle class. XXX has got only two things: a small, super rich, super wealthy, super powerful, super in control elite group, and the rest are all plebs. And if you see how plebs are being mowed down, look at how many people have been killed in Gaza, how many people have been killed in Ukraine. Everywhere across the globe, ordinary people are being killed by the thousands, and some places by the millions. But the population don't take note of that. We in South Africa are now sitting with a very dangerous situation. And that is, there's a movement in the populace that are beginning to get fed up for this. And you can see that there are people that are beginning to organize because they've had enough. If you look at what happens in most of the towns, there is civilian groupings that are doing basic services that the municipality is supposed to do. The municipalities are totally dysfunctional. Most of the time because they don't have money, because their salary bill exceeds their revenue and they need support from central government just to make their wage bill. So with what can they maintain infrastructure? They can't. In the old days, municipal council members got a very small gratuity for the services that they gave to the municipality. But those people were also not in full-time employment in the municipality. They were doing it part-time because they had their own businesses, their own farms, their own practices, and then they did what they did at the municipality as a service to the community. Today, that is gone. Today, you get some connected cadres that are sitting there. 80% of them cannot read a financial document, but they vote over budgets and things like that. But they're getting obscene salaries and obscene benefit packages. Again, this political elite is creaming it while the ordinary people are struggling. We saw it during the pestilence. All of them unanimously supported locking us down, closing our businesses and all of that cock, and we were in deep shit. While they got their full salaries, they even got increases during that period. What fucking insanity is that? So what is my proposal? My proposal is the tribes must get together, sit at a table and say, okay, how are we going to sort out the shit in our own tribal areas? What do we need there? Come to a conclusion and agreement, and then cancel all politicians. If we do not cancel all politicians, we will not make it. Because the politicians are actually the monster that is devouring us. And that monster is under direct control of XXX. So, think about that. Think about Kudesa. At that Kudesa table, tribal leaders should have been sitting at that table, not politicians. And you must understand, if we want to get any sensible negotiations going between the tribes, it can only succeed if you keep all politicians and all religious guys out there. They must not get close to that table. We have to isolate the political tribe and get them away, get them out of our lives, pack them into Robben Island and send them to Marion Island and put them on barges and let them float into the sea, because they bring nothing positive. Vusi Tembakwayo said it so aptly. You vote for a guy that has never built anything in his life, and then he gets into that position and you are upset because he builds nothing. That is the problem. For us to go forward, we have to get rid of all politicians. All of them. And this cleaning of the pigsty at the Freedom Front Plus is just the beginning of cutting the head of the snake. Because we cannot continue like this. They do not care about us. They only care about their own positions. That is all. Look at the Vaseline gang. Do it yourself. Go and check their financial situation. And you will be astounded if you find out how well off they are. And how did they get there? I mean, we've got a ridiculous situation in South Africa that the government, civil servants are being made millionaires out of their salaries. That is unsustainable. It's a total fuck up and a clear indication of the levels of corruption in what we are forced to believe is a democracy. It's not. It's a gangster setup, and we will pay the price. So, in the end, the tribes will have to get together and start their own discussions among themselves, get to solutions, and cut all politicians out. Please give me a like and a subscribe and share the thing. Thank you for your support.